Welcome back to the channel. I've got some new stories for you tonight. The first one, I found buried deep in a local neighborhood forum, posted by someone who sounded like they'd never fully shaken it off. It's the kind of story that makes you question whether you're really ever alone when you think you are. Here's what they wrote. I live in an older 2-story house tucked back into one of those neighborhoods where everyone's yards sort of blend together. No real fences, just occasional shrubs or low brick walls pretending to mark property lines. It's quiet, a little rundown, but cheap, and it always felt safe enough. Most of my neighbors were older, retired couples who spent more time fussing with their gardens than actually talking to each other. It wasn't the sort of place where people locked their doors during the day. I'd gotten used to leaving my front windows open when it was warm, letting the cross breeze stir the heavy curtains. That night, it wasn't especially warm or cold, just still. I'd made myself dinner, washed the few dishes in the sink, and settled into the worn armchair in the living room with my laptop. The upstairs was dark. I hadn't been up there since I'd gotten home from work. Around 9 or so, just as I was starting to think about heading to bed, I heard it. A creak. Not the kind you get when the house settles. I know those sounds well. The odd ticking in the walls. The groan of old pipes when the temperature dips. No, this was sharp, sudden, and deliberate. It came from directly above me, in the hallway between the spare bedroom and the master bedroom. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a bird had gotten into the attic somehow. Maybe a branch was scraping the roof. But the sound came again. 2 distinct, slow footsteps. I turned the volume on my laptop all the way down, listening so hard my ears hurt. My heart had started that embarrassing fluttery pounding you only get when you know you're alone. But you're not. It felt ridiculous, getting scared in my own house. I sat there for what felt like an hour, barely breathing, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I got up. I kept telling myself if I didn't check, I'd never sleep. Grabbing the heavy flashlight from the kitchen drawer, an old habit from camping trips, I clicked it on and made my way to the stairs. I didn't call out. I didn't want to announce myself if someone was up there. I climbed the stairs slowly, wincing with every quiet groan of the wood. The flashlight beam danced ahead of me, long and jittery. At the top, the hallway stretched to the left, ending in the guest room, with my bedroom tucked off to the right. Both doors were open, yawning black. I listened again. Silence. My throat felt dry enough to crack. I edged toward the guest room first. It was closer, and swept the light inside. The room was untouched. My old twin bed, stacked boxes, a dusty armchair. No sign of anything unusual. When I turned toward my bedroom, though, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. The window. It was open about 6 inches. And I never leave that window open. I stood there in the hallway, feeling the cold draft brush against my ankles. I hadn't opened that window in weeks. It barely even budged without a fight. The frame warped from years of humidity. And yet there it was, gaping just enough for someone to slip a hand through. The beam from my flashlight caught on something at the base of the window. A faint smudge, almost like a streak from dirty fingers, right along the sill. Every instinct told me not to go in. But if someone was inside, if they were hiding, I needed to know. I couldn't just go back downstairs and pretend everything was fine. I inched into the bedroom, sweeping the flashlight around. My bed was untouched, the covers still neatly pulled up. The closet door was shut, a pile of laundry in the corner where I'd left it. I swallowed and crossed the room, feeling horribly exposed. The open closet door stared at me like a mouth. I jabbed the flashlight inside. Nothing, just clothes, shoes, and dust. But the sense of wrongness didn't leave. I pulled the window shut with a loud thunk, fumbling with the lock. It jammed as usual, and I had to force it. As I struggled, I thought I heard it again. The creak. Not behind me this time. Below. I turned off the flashlight instinctively, plunging the room into darkness except for the faint glow from the streetlights outside. Holding my breath, I crouched low and crept back into the hallway. I could hear it now. Deliberate, careful steps moving through the living room downstairs. I had locked the front door. I knew I had. But the back door, the one that led to the overgrown garden, I couldn't remember if I'd slid the deadbolt. My phone was still on the coffee table downstairs. I had no way to call anyone without going back into the living room, right toward whoever was down there. I backed into the bathroom at the end of the hall and eased the door almost shut, leaving it open just a crack. I perched on the edge of the bathtub, straining to hear over the thudding of my racing heartbeat. The steps moved toward the stairs, slow, measured. Whoever it was wasn't rushing. They knew I was there. They wanted me to hear them coming. I scanned the bathroom for anything I could use as a weapon. A heavy ceramic soap dish, a metal towel rod. Nothing that would really make a difference if someone was determined. The first stair creaked, then another and another. They were getting closer. I pressed myself tighter against the wall, clutching the soap dish like it might actually save me. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, and then nothing. No movement, no sound. Just the unbearable silence stretching out, long enough that I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe the noises were from the neighbors. Maybe an animal had gotten in. Then, the floorboard outside the bathroom door creaked. Not the floorboard in the hallway, the one right outside the door. The one I always accidentally stepped on myself. My mouth went completely dry. I squeezed the soap dish tighter, my hand shaking so badly it clinked softly against the porcelain tub. And somehow, horribly, I knew whoever was on the other side of the door heard it too. For a long, agonizing minute, neither of us moved. I could hear them breathing, low, slow, steady, listening, waiting. Then, without warning, the bathroom door pushed inward a few inches, just enough that I could see a shadow, not a full figure, just the outline of someone's shoe, the hem of jeans. They didn't say anything. They didn't rush in. They just stood there. I was about 3 seconds away from throwing the soap dish and making a run for the window, when the sharp squawk of police sirens cut through the air. The shadow shifted. I heard fast retreating steps pounding back down the hallway, down the stairs, the screen door slamming hard enough to rattle the whole house. I stayed frozen for another full minute before I could make myself move. I crept to the window, cracked it open, and screamed for help. My neighbor 2 doors down, an old Vietnam vet who never missed a thing, was already outside with a bat in his hands. The police were responding to a different call on the next street over, but when they came to check my house, they found clear, muddy footprints tracked from the back door, up the stairs, and into the hallway. The window in my bedroom had been jimmied open from the outside. Someone had climbed the old wooden trellis to get in. They never caught whoever it was. And I never leave my windows open anymore. Even on the hottest nights, even when the air inside feels suffocating, I keep every door, every window, every lock sealed tight. Because once you know how easily someone can step into your home, right under your nose, you never really feel safe again. That's where that story ends. A stranger creeping silently through the shadows of her own home. But while that one leaves you afraid of what's lurking upstairs, the next story hits differently. And this time, it's not about someone already inside. It's about the danger waiting just outside the front door. Here's the next one. It happened on a random Tuesday, the kind of day that feels like background noise in your memory. Nothing special, nothing to mark it. I'd gotten home from work a little later than usual, the sky already tipping into that dull gray blue before full dark. The walk from my car to the front door felt heavier than normal. Maybe it was the thick humidity hanging in the air. Or maybe it was just one of those instincts you only notice afterward, when it's too late to do anything about it. I lived in a duplex at the time, just me on one side, an elderly woman named Mrs. Ferris on the other. She mostly kept to herself, her little patch of garden the only real sign of life. I liked it that way. Quiet, predictable. I had just dumped my bag on the couch and kicked off my shoes when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. No packages, no friends dropping by. For a second, I just stood there, debating whether to even answer. But it rang again, more insistent this time. I pulled aside the little curtain over the door's window, just enough to peek out. Standing there was a delivery guy, or at least someone dressed like one. Plain brown polo shirt, cap, a clipboard in his hand. Nothing about him screamed danger. He looked normal. Late 30s maybe, slight gut, a tired slump to his shoulders like he'd been working all day. I cracked the door open, keeping the chain latched.
I got a package for 483.
He said, glancing down at the clipboard.
I need a signature too, please.
I hesitated. This is 482, I said. You've got the wrong house. He frowned, flipping through the clipboard like he was double-checking.
You sure?
He said. I shook my head. Nope, didn't order anything. Maybe next door? I nodded toward Mrs. Ferris's unit. He gave a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry about that.
He turned and ambled off toward the sidewalk, not even bothering to try the other door. Something about it bothered me. The way he didn't seem all that confused. The way he left so quickly. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he realized he was on the wrong street. Maybe he was just tired and fed up with a long shift. I bolted the door, double-checked the locks, and went about my evening. Later, though, when I went to let my cat in from the back patio, I noticed something that made my stomach knot up tight. The screen door's frame, which I knew had been snug that morning, was bent. Just slightly. Just enough that someone might have tried to pry it open. I stood there for a long minute, one hand on the doorframe, staring at that bent screen. It was the kind of thing you could almost talk yourself out of noticing. Maybe it had always been a little crooked. Maybe the weather had warped it. But deep down, I knew better. Still, what was I supposed to do? Call the police and tell them a delivery guy possibly bent my screen door? They'd laugh me off the phone. I locked the patio door, dropped the blinds, and made sure every window and door in the house was sealed up tight. Then I turned on every light, like that would somehow make a difference. The night dragged. I couldn't relax, couldn't focus on my book, couldn't even really watch TV. Every few minutes, I found myself glancing at the windows, half expecting to see a face staring in. Nothing happened. Not then. It was around 2 a.m. when I finally drifted off, curled up on the couch under a heavy blanket, the TV screen still flickering faintly in the dark. I don't know what woke me. Maybe it was the sudden absence of sound. The TV had clicked off automatically, leaving the house in a thick, smothering silence. Maybe it was something else. I sat up slowly, disoriented, my mouth dry, my heart already hammering in my chest. Something wasn't right. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, and that's when I saw it. A shadow just barely visible at the front window. Someone was standing there, backlit by the faint glow of the street lamp just outside the glass. Not moving, just watching. The silhouette was wrong. Too broad in the shoulders to be Mrs. Ferris. Too tall for a kid. For a second, I was frozen, my mind flailing for an explanation. A neighbor? A drunk? Some idiot prankster? But before I could move, before I could even breathe properly, the figure shifted slightly, raising one hand. In the weak light, I saw it. The clipboard. held up like some kind of grotesque prop, like a reminder. You've seen me before. It wasn't a random drunk, it wasn't a mistake. He had come back, and this time, he wasn't ringing the bell. I slid off the couch as quietly as I could, my bare feet finding the floor with a soft thud. I kept low, heart battering so hard in my chest I was sure he could hear it through the glass. The curtains were drawn, thank God. He couldn't see me clearly. At least, I told myself he couldn't. I crawled into the narrow hallway that led toward the kitchen and the back door, staying out of view from every window. The plan, if you could call it that, was simple. Get to the phone, call 911, stay hidden until help came. I made it to the kitchen without hearing any sound from the front porch. For one terrible second, I thought maybe he was already inside, that he'd gotten in through the back somehow. But then, there was a soft metallic scrape against the front door. The unmistakable rattle of someone testing the handle. Slow, patient, like he wasn't worried about being caught. I grabbed the landline off the wall. Yes, I still had a landline back then, and punched 911 with shaking fingers. The dispatcher picked up almost immediately. I whispered into the phone, trying to give them my address, stumbling over my own words. I couldn't even be sure they understood me, but I heard them say, "Stay on the line. Officers are on the way." The next sound I heard was the clunk of something heavy hitting the front door. Not a kick, not a slam. More like a shoulder, testing how much force it would take. I backed into the pantry, pulling the door almost shut behind me, wedging myself into the narrow, dusty space between the shelves. I could still hear the dispatcher's voice, tinny and distant, from where I'd dropped the phone onto the tile. Another thud at the door, another, harder. The wood groaned under the impact. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling my nails dig into the shelves behind me, and then, suddenly, silence. Minutes ticked by, dragging so slowly I felt like I could hear the second hand grinding on the clock. When the police finally knocked, loud, clear, official, it took everything I had not to collapse right there on the floor. They didn't find him. Whoever it was, he was gone by the time they arrived. They found faint scuff marks on the door, fingerprints on the window frame, but nothing they could really use. The worst part? When I described the guy, the brown shirt, the cap, the clipboard, one of the officers nodded grimly. There had been reports of someone matching that description in the next town over, going door to door, pretending to be a delivery driver, looking for easy targets, just waiting for someone to open up. It still makes me sick when I think about how close I came to unlatching the chain. How easily I could have let him in, thinking it was just a simple mistake. Now, every time the doorbell rings unexpectedly, I don't even bother peeking out. I just lock myself in the back room and wait. Because once you realize that danger can look completely normal, can smile, hold a clipboard, and act like he belongs there, you never see strangers the same way again. That's it for tonight. If these stories hit you, drop a comment and tell me. Did they get under your skin? Hit the like if you felt it, and subscribe for more. Turn on notifications too. The next one's coming. Until then, sleep light.